All right, everybody, welcome back to the Crazyhouse World Championship. Feels like it's been a while since either we've had a match or I've commentated on a match, so looking forward to getting back into the mix here. And in today's match, we have opperwezen against eekarf. Eekarf currently sitting at the last place in the standings, and opperwezen currently sitting at number 3. So opperwezen is still in contention for the podium here, as the Crazyhouse World Championship slowly winds down. We had the much anticipated 12-team versus Jan Lee match the other day, and 12-team has clinched his spot in the final championship, as has either Blitz Bullet or Jan Lee. Blitz Bullet will have to come up with a dominating performance over his last 3 matches to catch up. But anyway, opperwezen here still is in contention to clinch number 3. So let's just hop into the actual position here, as usual. Had to give my little preamble there. Opperwezen using a little bit more time out of the opening, but fairly symmetrical and fairly even here. Putting a knight on, nicely centralized on d4, hitting the weak c6 spot. And eekarf's going to let that drop just to get some active counterplay of his own. Opperwezen doesn't want that pawn, just blocks off that diagonal. Okay. Do hope this is up and running, and I do hope the window is correct. As you see, I've tried to cut some things off, and just so you get a little bit larger board, and the board should take a little bit more space on your screen instead of seeing my desktop icons and stuff. So I'm finally figuring this whole OBS thing out. Use the open broadcast software. Open source, free, it's nice, but I'm not very familiar with it, so. Alright, opperwezen piling up on c6 here. That pawn is liable to be taken at any point, although it will take some, it'll take a tempo or two, but you also get tempo or two back by hitting that queen. That queen doesn't have too many good, it only has one square actually that I can go to, so instead eekarf is opting for more active solutions here. But you can just pick this bishop back up. That's, he's dropping a ton of material there, and possibly mate as well on e7 there. So first game goes to opperwezen. Alright, and he's going to go for the 4 knights defense here. And d5, I like playing this myself. Let's see how he treats it. d4, you can go bishop out here. You can play a6, stop a bishop coming out and pinning you up. You can play e6. e6 is probably the most solid. You can even take the knight here on c3. That's another option. It creates this weakness here on c3. That's what he goes for. And now he places the knight on e4, again hitting that weakness on c3. Okay. Bishop comes out to defend that. Now e5, yeah, that's very active. That's a pawn that can be taken. Of course, you have 2 defenders of that square, but then it opens up the queen's attack on d2. So opperwezen going for the sharp tactical riposte there, to use a fencing term. I'm even pronouncing that correctly. But all right, now eekarf is putting some pressure on black c6 square. Do you just want to block that? Bishop d7, or leave it as is and try to get some active play? Bishop c5. It's a very sharp, complex position here. And you have to balance whether you want to defend or attack very precisely, very cleverly. Alright, so he opts for a defense here. Yep, queen coming out and pinning him up. I think that's more precise than in immediate castles, because you can always run into a pawn at h3 with the immediate castles here, and the queen is now on an active square. Okay, so you can take here, yeah. Knight blocks that, and now you have tension here, you have tension here. Capture, capture, and now I think you can just take on d4, unless there's a better, like knight at e5 is possible. But then you can insert this intermezzo. Okay, yeah, so it just takes back. Now you have a hole here on b2 that you can use. Another important square is this d5 square. Yeah, I like this move better. Raking across this diagonal here, where a lot of pretty tender spots are positioned. eekarf seems to be always he seems to be a very combative player, and what I mean by that is instead of ever going for passive defense or just defending stuff, he goes for a counterattack whenever possible. Okay, so now I don't think you can take that because of a knight drop here, and I don't think you can just let it be because of a knight drop here, which it will lead to mate with all this material in hand and the heavy piece in hand, the queen. So you have to defend against this square, first of all. I don't see any counterplay you can stir up as black here because you only have a queen in hand. Okay, so knight here, you're just going to sidestep, I think, is this plan. That's what bring this bishop out accomplishes. No, up here you fall to a knight here, so I think you have to go to, I was going to say f8. d8 is also possible because this rook defends this square, and this rook would have defended this square had you stepped that way, so okay. And now you do use this vacant b2 square. Opperwezen way down the clock, though. This is a little bit dangerous. That can be taken because now you have two defenders of this square, so a knight at c5 can just be taken. So now you're pinning that up, and now a knight at c5 drop is a threat. So you have to defend against that. And also just taking here is a threat. Taking, and once you have another knight in hand, you can place here and takes, and then knight here. A lot of ways to come in. Knight here. So yeah, how do you defend all this? Maybe you just want to play queen at e7 and just opt for defense. But yeah, he maybe could have thrown some defensive moves there. But with 10 seconds on the clock to eekarf's, I don't know, he had like 2 minutes or something remaining. He had ample time on the clock to finish that one off. So opperwezen throws in the towel and is 1-1 now. Going for the same opening here. So eekarf, when presented with this dilemma, captured here on d5. Opperwezen is going for the opposite approach and just pushing past and going for this double knight trade here. This is a line. Takes on c3 or knight at h5. So if takes, then you take here and then recapture, so that's not possible. Rook's just going to defend that. Now you can take back on c3. Bring this rook to the b file eventually. Bishop takes c3. Okay, so if takes, you're going to take. I mean, that's just a piece. I would take that. I don't see what his plan is. After takes, king takes. How do you draw that king out? Maybe pawn at b2 at the end there? That's interesting. Or maybe he's going for... No, I don't know. I think that can be taken. So opperwezen calculating right now whether or not it's possible to take that, but I think it is. Bishop hops out to a3. Okay, so he's opting not to take that. I mean, you're offering this rook. You can just recapture that. He takes on d2 instead, so I think that's wise. Instead of capturing this rook here and bring this queen to an active position, you're going to capture on d2 and create a bunch of dark square weaknesses here that you're going to be able to exploit. So after takes, you can place a pawn here. And I'm expecting pawn here, because then you threaten after the knight moves a pawn at d2 check. Floris mentioning pawn at h3. That's possible as well. I think pawn at c3 is a little bit more direct. Yeah, so we go for this pawn at c3 instead. Pawn at h3 was also interesting, sure. The idea being if you capture, then you can place a pawn on g2. So now he's just going to... Okay, so takes, and then you bring your queen to a dark square and defend thusly. Yeah, I don't know. I like this play from eekarf capturing on c2 and then d2. Given the fact that opperwezen didn't recapture, maybe there's some sort of tactical sequence I was missing there that made the capture impossible. But I think... unless there's something I am missing, that I think it was just best. But given that he didn't go for that, I like this position now for eekarf. Okay, hitting g2 now. How do you want to defend that? If you just go like rook g1 rather, that can just be taken, or you can't even pile up with it. Like at h3, bishop h3 is possible as well. Opperwezen tries to get out dodge, castles queenside. Importantly, this bishop covers this dark square hole on b2. But eekarf's just going to pound it. Yeah, I think eekarf's going to come away with this one. You have to be a little bit careful about possibilities of knight dropping, or, hopping into f6 here with this pen. Like if you can imagine, if the piece were here, knight f6 would be checkmate. But yeah, eekarf's just not going to fall for any funny business here. Going to block off this entire file here, so that rook is now not such an active threat. Now this is hanging, and you want to start putting pawns on dark squares over here. as soon as you can. The threat here maybe is takes, or knight into g7 in some positions with all these pins going on, but you're also just threatening to take here with either the bishop or the queen here on h7. So okay, opperwezen, as usual, has found a way to find some active play. About even on the clock here, 1 minute each. Yeah, Floris commentating that this is a very open and tactical game. It is. It certainly is. These 4 knights positions with d5 inserted instead of e4, e5 often become very tactical battles for sure. All right, rook takes g2. Now he has another pawn in hand to start placing stuff, but I would probably have just taken there, but opperwezen instead decides to put a bishop at e4, hitting here and here. He wants another knight in hand. I think that's his idea. He desperately wants another knight in hand, so he has... get rid of some of these arrows. He has some threats of a knight drop here, and hopefully opening up this rook eventually and bringing that pin to bear. Eekarf is going to ignore that threat temporarily and place a pawn at c3, so now he has some dark square holes to progress on. But now, yeah, he's blocked off. I was going to say he's blocked off the more major threats, but now he has some threat. opperwezen has some threats of his own. Knight here is going to drag the king out. Knight here instead. Ah, that's very nice, opening up the bishop. Now the king runs, and knight here is checkmate. Queen cuts this off. Knight cuts this off. Very nice find there from opperwezen. Interesting tactical solution there. And now we're going for e4, e5. Okay, so we're kind of veering away from the very tactical waters of the last few positions with the 4 knights and e4, d5, and now we're going into a more strategic battle. But as soon as I say that opperwezen captures on f2, which is one way of meeting the bishop e2 lines, capturing here on f2 and then replacing this pawn here on d4, hitting the knight and driving it away from the defense of this pawn. So you pretty much immediately get your material back. Eekarf wisely is just developing this rook and giving his king an avenue to get back and castle by hand. You can just recapture your material here if you want. Takes, then he has to decide whether he wants to recapture here or defend this pawn. This is actually a line that you see with colors reversed a lot, so d5 and knight takes e5 here. Interesting. I'm not sure why I didn't want to just recapture that knight on c3 first off, but now he's going to capture on e4 check and probably just castle. Probably just... okay, no, this is smarter actually. Blocking off the rook's access to f7 first, and then you can castle if you want. Or, yeah, actually, now that you've blocked this off, I think it's best not to castle. Capture here first, and then knight here, or queen here, or rook here even. Skewering these 2 pieces if you want to pick up another knight. But queen here is chosen, queen f6, just developing the queen with tempo. And now you have, ooh, this is going to be a little bit dangerous. Knight here, you would like another pawn in hand if you're black. Knight here or here. And then, so let's see here. Let's say knight here, king back to g1. You have no pawn in hand. You can consider taking on h1. Maybe it's not best. But what else is there? opperwezen looking for a creative move here, and he finds one with knight at h3. Okay, so if that's taken, the bishop's going to take, and now you're threatening a rook coming onto g2. But it is a piece, and you can defend this with like bishop at f1, maybe, because you have no knights in hand anymore, and you only have diagonal pieces in this rook. And the rook can only come in on g2. So white trying to figure out how to defend g2. Maybe you could even just run king e1, but then the rook comes on the back rank, or the first rank rather. So yeah, I like bishop at f1 here. Instead, he just covers this hole up immediately with at g2. And if opperwezen retreats, that's just going to be a concession. He has to take there, but now he's down a lot of material here. And supposing eekarf finds the most precise defensive moves. I think if you what I'm trying to say is if eekarf finds precise defensive moves, he should stand better here. But then again, eekarf doesn't like defending at all, so he goes for this knight at h5, knight at f4. Okay, hitting that queen again, and hitting the g2 square and defending that with tempo. So now once the queen moves, then you can probably just take this if you want. Where does this queen even go? Like if you go here to try to keep defending that square, no, he's not even going to do that because the queen would just get hit by a lot of piece drops. So now he's going to capture here. So if you take, then I don't know. I'm still not convinced. He's just going to capture here and remain ultra safe. He has plenty of defensive pieces around his king side. Bishop covers this square, knight covers this square, knight covers this square from drops, and this square is covered by this battery. The square again is covered here, and pretty much every square is around his king is well guarded. So there are no drops he really needs to be terribly worried about here. e5 comes in, which is the one square he didn't have defended multiple times here. Attacking the queen, you can just take that, but can you take this? If takes bishop here, king takes knight f2, skewering those two pieces, but white's counterattack. I mean, you don't even have time to take the queen if you do win it, because white is threatening a mate at e7 or d8 immediately. So you can't give up tempo here or check here. You have to keep checking. So this bishop here, pawn here doesn't really work. Rook here, king up, bishop here, or maybe f5. So you can f5 and g6, and bishop on. The king can probably just sit safely on h4. Yeah, in fact, I think eekarf's going to win this one. opperwezen has 10 seconds to eekarf's 40 seconds. The king will sit safely on h4. And opperwezen is simply giving up too much material for this attack in eekarf. He's just going to win this. All right, so what's the score now? We'll have to look for it in the chat next game. I think I haven't been keeping track really. Anyway, the game goes to eekarf here. Let's see if the chat tells us what the score is now. 2-1 eekarf, Floor says. All right. So eekarf is playing the role of the spoiler here. He may be able to knock opperwezen out of contention for third place. We'll see. Oh, 2-2. Okay, I stand corrected here. 2-2. And again, we're going for a little bit of a different setup here. We have the 4 knights again, but instead of this pawn structure, we have the French-like pawn structure with e6, without the immediate d5 push. But I suspect that d5 will come eventually. Yeah, I mean there are options here. Leaving this pawn on d7 gives you options of playing maybe d6 and e5 in some positions, so it's flexible. All right, hitting g7 here. Rook comes over to defend that. Pretty equal. I was looking for a plan there for white. He decides just to develop another piece, bring it to the E file, make it active. Okay. So yeah, I was going to say, now you want to hit this diagonal, and you're threatening stuff like rook takes knight and the knight drop here in some positions. So eekarf wisely pushed another diagonal piece. So now if you play bishop h4, he's probably thinking about f6. The difference being that the queen is now developed, the king has this square to run to, and when you play f6, the queen now defends g7. So bishop here is not as effective. It's still probably a decent move. Here, f6, or maybe even bishop f6 is possible in that position, because then if you take, you can open up the rook. So bishop h4 doesn't seem to lead to much. It's like one of those natural moves that a lot of players would play immediately, probably myself included. But opperwezen here, he recognizes that's not going to lead to all that much, so he's spending some time here to try to find a better move. And I guess he concludes that there was no better move in the position to be found. Maybe he was considering stuff like just to bring this bishop to this diagonal and hitting this square, but he just goes for this move. The bishop does come on to f6, so I don't think you want to take that and allow this rook all that life. But also you have to address the fact that this is now under fire from two pieces, so how do you defend h4 without capturing? Maybe just retreat it to g3. You hit c7, and you possibly kind of distract this knight away from this file. Well, he's going to take instead. I'm not convinced, but I guess you do have sacks on f6. Sacks on f6, and then blocking off a pawn at g5, or because f6 will be a kind of weak spot. Knight at g4. That's a pretty nice move. Actually, that's a very nice move. I was going to say, supposing it couldn't be hit by immediate h3, but yeah, you're pressuring f2 here. That's a very nice move. This is a incredibly active piece because it hits g2 twice, hits h2, and it defends f6 from all these threats. Opperwezen goes for the sack anyway, but he's way down on time again. This has happened to him a fair amount in this championship round robin. He gets promising positions, but perhaps doesn't spend his time as wisely or as quickly as some of the other candidates who are more used to playing Bughouse on fix. And as you may or may not know, if you play on fix, that Bughouse on fix is played at light speed. And eekarf, of course, is an old fix haunt, so he's quite capable of playing very quickly. All right, he knows the kind of cost-benefit ratio of finding good moves versus playing quickly, and finding that happy middle ground. All right, bishop coming on to h8, defending that diagonal. Opperwezen, I mean, his position is okay. He's giving a little bit of material away, and his attack is dissipating. He doesn't have as much pressure along the dark squares anymore. Look how many times he has this defended. I was going to say by 3 pieces, this knight, the queen, and the bishop. So the dark squares weren't so much of an issue. eekarf now going on the attack, now that he's given himself some safety. Sacking on f2, drawing the king out, and he has 1 minute and 6 seconds now to figure out what the best way to flag Opperwezen here is, essentially, because Opperwezen has only 12 seconds, and even if you don't get a crushing position on the board, eekarf is quite capable of finishing off by flagging here. Alright. Bishop out to this diagonal, threatening rook drops here and here. Jeez. So that's what this knight was covering. And now you do have rook drops. eekarf trying to find a mate here, I think. Rook drop here, king has to step up, knight here, king back, or knight here maybe is better, because it defends or blocks off this square. And you have discoveries with this knight. And so he goes for g4. And now, okay, so steps back, rooks can come on. Now you're going to have discoveries. If here, knight mates. If here, you just have discoveries with this rook. And yeah, Opperwezen had no time remaining anyway. So that is game. That's 3-2 now to eekarf. Okay, going for a little bit of a deviation from the e4, d5 lines they're playing in the first few games here. So instead of going for the 4 knights, you're leaving a few knights behind and going for the immediate d5, center counter and or Scandinavian. So this knight is undeveloped. Sacking on c7, making some dark square weaknesses. You capture the queen, and now you're going to have pawn drops on e5 and d6 here. So do you want to capture here twice? Yeah. So going to say capture here twice, or just retreat the queen or whatever, and contend that eekarf has no more material to progress with. But instead he's going to capture twice. This is now under fire. Maybe just bishop h5 is fine here. Goes for bishop f5. Okay, hitting this. Castles you can take if you want, but then you're going to fall a little bit behind in development. You don't want to leave your king in the center just forever, probably. Although maybe it's possible in this kind of position here. At f6, and maybe you can even push this h-pawn up the board. I guess that's possible. So if you take here, eekarf's just going to have a lot, I don't know. Takes, queen takes, and then you have a check here. But then the queen covers that, you can take. So maybe it was possible to get away with grabbing a little bit of material there on e5. Of course, I didn't spend a whole bunch of time to calculate that line, so maybe it wasn't working, but opperwezen decides not to go for it and takes on h3, or drops on h3 and then recaptures. Then now he's going to take on g2, and now at g4 is the usual continuation. At g4 or at e5, or at e4, I mean this knight covers g4, so at e4. If this knight moves, you can put the pawn in on f3, but then, I mean, he has so much coverage of this square, it's not going to lead to all that much. Now he's going to get his material back. Now he's taking here, and you can take here and then take here. I think that's probably... okay, so instead of taking here, he just takes on e5 immediately. He's thinking whether he wants to throw in a check first and intermezzo before he recaptures, but he doesn't. A check's going to be available, whatever he does. I mean, you can consider checks here, but if pawn here, maybe the king just steps back and then you're attacking both these spots. Maybe he can even get away with taking that, and he does. He's going to grab that pawn while he can. Now when you... okay, the bishop is on that square, and I like this for eekarf. Eekarf has plenty of defense. He has a bishop on the dark squares, pawns on the dark squares, and these two bishops and this queen on the light squares. So he's actually fairly safe here. Maybe you need to be a little bit careful about knight drops here, because then the king is in a mating box. But yeah, actually, knight here takes here would be mate, right? So that's the only thing you need to be a little bit careful about, is allowing this mating box. Yeah, there's a mating 2 threat. Oh, did he miss it? He missed it. Oh man, yeah, and the opperwezen throws that on the board immediately. Oh man, if he had just taken a second or two to appreciate the fact that his king was going to be in a mating net and just step the king back to g2 or throw in another defensive piece somewhere, I think he would have been winning that, you know, in a winning position in that game. But opperwezen, crafty opperwezen comes up with the maiden 2 there. eekarf showing a little bit of little lapse in concentration. All right, so 3-all. Very contentious match here. And these the next few games here are going to decide it. All right, this is going to be another very tactical, very open game here. eekarf deciding whether he wants to block on f6 or possibly e7 or just move the queen away. Then if you move the queen away, you have to be a little bit careful about whenever white gets this knight in hand, you can play stuff at h6, and then if this pawn is diverted, then you can play a knight f6, forking the queen and the king. So maybe you just want to block like pawn at f6. He does. Alright, opperwezen opening things up now, releasing the tension here, capturing on e5. Now this brings the queen into the fray here. And I suspect that this knight will be captured eventually here. And then you can place this knight on h5, but eekarf, sensing that danger, moves this knight away, captures here on c3. What is going on here? What is going on here? So, if takes pawn here... So what's opperwezen? Has he found some sort of obscure mate here? I don't know. eekarf doesn't think it's enough, and I'm not sure if it is either. But actually, it looks pretty dangerous. Yeah, now that I kind of take some time to assess this, it does look dangerous. You have, I mean, tons of dangerous diagonal pieces around black's king, and meanwhile, black, while up in, you know, pretty much a whole queen, has no easy inroads into white's king to make this queen useful. So opperwezen now figuring out the best way to crack through here. Maybe just bishop here. Okay, maybe you want to keep this bishop on this diagonal instead. On a h6. So if takes, king takes, pawn on, king can sidestep, then what? And then maybe you take here and threaten a knight coming in, or I'm not sure. Maybe you can just recapture this eventually. eekarf, as usual, going for the counterattack instead of passively defending. But I think the problem with this move is that, yeah, now you allow this with check, opening up these two rooks to communicate with each other. Now you can take this twice if you want to, and I think opperwezen may just do that. Rook takes d1 here, or actually no, you probably want to insert this first. Take on d7, king takes, rook takes d1. opperwezen should be a little bit cognizant about how he's managing his clock here. Falling a little bit behind in time again. Okay, so yeah, he takes here. This was possible, but I suppose if you ever capture here, then well, the king side is going to collapse one way or another, I think. So eekarf captures there with check. And now, how do you defend this? This bishop is, yeah, these two bishops are nicely coordinating to construct a mating net around the king. This bishop is penning on this diagonal. It looks nasty. So opperwezen giving up a whole queen here in this game for very promising attack. Yeah, Joanna is calling mate already, and I believe it. Bishop here is possible, that can be taken a few times. Drawing the king out, knight here. Now you can pick up a rook if you need to, but a bishop is probably going to appear on this square. Like if king here, bishop here is mate immediately. The only other move is king up to f5, but then, okay, so where's a mate here? This knight is hanging. So bishop here, king takes. Pawn on. Pawn on, king over, pawn here. Yeah, that's mate. That's just mate, right? So pawn here and pawn here will mate. Although he doesn't have another pawn in hand, so yeah, okay, I didn't realize he didn't have a second pawn. So this bishop will do nicely. That's another diagonal piece here. Now the pawn at d3 does mate. Very nicely done from opperwezen. opperwezen's intuition and gut instinct of giving away that queen for that attack did indeed pay off. Alright, opperwezen going for this center counter again, the Scandi, and instead he goes for the knight f6 variation, recapturing on f5 or on d5 with that knight. And now we have a trade of knights. Equal position. Alright, so usual moves here. You can just develop the bishop and defend this. You can even play pawn at b2 to defend and shore up this square if you're really worried about that being a problem later on. eekarf instead just develops the bishop. Yeah, that makes sense. And we have this e5 move again. Yeah, very enterprising play here from opperwezen. I like it. He just wants active play. Okay, so bishop comes to b5 again, and the threat, I suppose, here is just pushing. Oh, no, the queen's on there. I was going to say pushing d5 and putting more pressure on this, but right now the queen is on that square, so. Joanna is saying white is better in this position. Goes for the bishop. I think this knight is actually maybe a little bit more valuable than this bishop, but opperwezen disagrees and he wants that bishop in hand. So bishop here doesn't lead to much after rook b1. Pushing pawn e4 is possible, but that allows d5 because now this queen defends this. So it goes for pawn at b2, but after rook here, bishop here maybe is his idea, but I don't really believe it. Knight captures, now he blocks with this pin. Yeah, I think white stands better here. I agree with Joannet. Yeah, this is very dangerous. So if takes pawn here, I don't think you want to allow the queen trade on black's terms. So here you just draw the king out first, probably. Takes pawn here, king takes knight here. You have 3 knights in hand, plus this queen has purview of a lot of dark squares over here that I can swing to should need be with check. So yeah, I think this pawn is immune to capture. So normally the response to a pawn at e6 is queen e7 and these types of positions, but queen e7 fails to pawn at d7. I'll take that back actually because this is pen. So pawn at d7, you can just take that. Maybe just castle here and say, now what? I think if you just castle here, actually when I say that, this bishop is a little bit. Nah, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Castles, even if you take here, put pawns on or anything, I think white's attack is gonna. It's just too strong. It's gonna come first. I think you want to castle here, not necessarily get your king to safety, but just to get your king out of this pin, so that now this pawn is mobile and can create some threats. You can even contemplate stuff like knight takes here, queen takes, this pawn, knight blocks, takes, and then pawn at d7. Instead he goes for knight at f5, hitting the queen, and bishop does come onto this square. Yeah, now the queen can just step over to this file and block this off. This is, yeah, white's going to win this. I'm quite confident in saying that right now at this stage. eekarf again is tripling opperwezen on the clock, approximately. Alright, queen's under fire, but you can just block that off with pawn at d3. I think pawn at d3 is fine here, or pawn at d7. Pawn at d7 if you want to immediately attack. Okay, so he opens this up, takes. Now you can take here, or even maybe just take. Takes, bishop takes, knight here, king over. Queen here maybe. Okay, so he goes for the check here on c6, and the idea is it opens up this square, so king has a little bit more area over here. Can you get away with just taking here? Probably, because black has no diagonal pieces. He has no spaces, no squares for this knight to check on. Yeah, you can just take here, or maybe you have a mate. Maybe you can take here immediately. eekarf is playing it ultra safe and just wants his bishop off this diagonal. So then he can capture here and not have anything to worry about. Takes a queen with check. Yeah, that's all she wrote. That's it. So what does that make the score here? So it's 4-3 opperwezen before this game. So now it's 4-4. eekarf coming back to tie it up 4-4. eekarf's been pretty. I think he's put up a good match in just about every match he's played. Come very close to scraping away a few clutch wins, but hasn't been able to convert in very many, unfortunately. But yeah, there's no reason to count this guy off. He's a very strong player, and giving opperwezen a run for his money. Could swing either way here. 4-4. So whoever wins this game will have clinched at least a tie in the match. Alright, so eekarf giving up a little bit of material here early, piece for a pawn, just to get this early dark square control and discomfort white's king a little bit. Okay, so now white would like to undermine this pawn chain somehow before black has a chance to scoop up all that much more material. Said he's going to give him material back and go on an attack of his own. Makes sense. So takes maybe knight here. I don't know. You have to. Knight f5 is. It covers a lot of crucial squares, actually, yeah, from pawn drop here. So now knight here, takes, or maybe don't even take that, maybe just sidestep the king. He does take it, he wants that material, okay. Pawn here, king steps up. Okay, so he's just going to bring the rook to the g file. So you can even get away with taking on h7, and then you kind of menace this pawn at g7, get pawn in hand that way. Black has no immediate way to break through. Yeah, I like just taking here. I mean, you can play like knight here. Takes, rook takes, knight on. So if knight here, maybe rook takes, bishop takes, rook here. Maybe this is the sort of thing like bishop back takes, king takes, and then you have these dark squares like bishop here, king over mate, something like that. Maybe that's what opperwezen is calculating right now, so he goes for it. Yeah, and with that just really brief calculation I went through, I think that this is working. So rook takes, and if bishop takes, rook here. So then maybe you have to block with that knight. So if pawn here, king up, knight here, then you can just take, white's safe. So that's really nothing doing. If you take this, this rook is going to come on to g8 here. Knight blocks. You can just scoop up that bishop. Or you can take the knight, maybe. Bishop takes, knight on. So king takes. Then what? Queen comes on the back rank, probably. So eekarf is desperately scrambling here to figure out how to defend this position. What about knight here? Yeah, king always just steps up to h2 where it's safe. Maybe pawn here, king steps up, promotes to a knight, takes. Pawn here. I mean, there's nowhere to put the rook on, really. So he's going to go for it. So rook at g8. Now, I don't believe that this is going to hold for black. I think white's attack is just strong enough to find mate. So you can just scoop this up if you want to and remain, completely in control of this position. Or you could even have taken that knight and gone for a mate directly, I think. But all right, so opperwezen has at least got a tie here, and now this game is going to be fighting for a win in the overall match. 5-4 opperwezen. We'll take a look at the standings after this match and see how this result affects everything. All right, so now we're going back into a little bit more strategic waters here. eekarf is now going to have to. Okay, he's going to take on e5. That's interesting from opperwezen, allowing that to drop. I was going to say strategic waters, but strategic play is just not in these guys' blood. they prefer tactical battles, I guess. He's going to allow this to drop. Normally you see knight c6 instead of this early knight f6, which is curious. So now instead of going for this symmetrical e4, e5, slow grinding type stuff, which can be sharp, of course, it's very, very densely theoretical, but they're going for something quite offbeat. opperwezen has his open lines. Quite nice development for all his pieces. His knights are nice and active. White, meanwhile, maybe has a little bit more material, but he's pretty cramped. His pieces are undeveloped. His king's still in the center. But, it's just a battle from here. White's going to try to slowly push black's pieces back and try to get some space of his own with moves like d4, blocking off this. Yeah, f3, d4. d4 is coming. Bishop's going to have to step back, or maybe b4. But then you liberate your pieces a little bit. Oh, that's interesting. So if takes, queen takes. But yeah, I don't think it's going to lead to much. You can take with the king, or you can take with the queen, or the knight, and cover this square. Pawn's going to come on immediately. Okay, so if king takes, queen takes, knight takes, what do you have? What's your follow-up? Maybe taking here. So okay, let's look at this. Takes, knight takes. I'm just going to go for this immediately. Okay, that's better. That's better. He can't take with the knight. The queen hangs. He can't take with the pawn. Queen hangs here too. So that's nice. Yeah. Knight takes e4 first was his idea. King sidesteps. Now you can take here, but then the knight can take and cover the square. So is there something better? He takes that. So now when you take here, you can place. You have this hole for the knight. Yeah, opperwezen finding a very precise continuation of this attack. King steps up. Rook here takes maybe. Nope, he's just going to take the material. Yep, makes sense. Just take that material. White has nothing on your king. Your bishop covers this square. He has no rook to draw your king out on this square. And meanwhile, you have material to continue the attack, threatening well, queen drop here or rook drop here, whatever. It will mate. So maybe bishop here. Is that defending? Is that enough? Black's also threatening sacks on f3, takes, and drawing the king out that way. Then you have pawn drops on these squares. So you can just take and then maybe take here. Or maybe rook to d8 first. Just kind of threatening this while bringing the rook to defend, overprotect this d7 square in case this bishop ever needs to move. So, I like this move. Or even castles queenside, maybe, but then, yeah, castles queenside is possible, I guess. But I like rook d8. Rook d8 is sufficient, I think. Knight takes here is sufficient. Rook d8 is chosen. Yeah, there are just a barrage or a barrage of threats here that eekarf has to defend against, and I don't think it's possible to defend against all of them. The immediate threat, of course, is queen at d1 checkmate, and if you bishop d2, that can probably just be taken. Bishop a3, then you vacate this square, and a queen drop here will mate, so that's not possible. It's going to block it off with the pawn d3. So now where's your crushing blow? I would consider taking here, or taking first here and then taking here with the knight. Goes for bishop. Okay, that's nice. That's nice. And now you renew the threat of a queen drop here at f2. You remove this defender of that square, capturing here, getting that bishop in hand, putting it here and renewing that threat. Now, eekarf with that traded piece puts a knight to defend this, but now you can, you can slow play it, like with moves like pawns on one of these two squares, but no, that's a bad idea, actually, because he has a knight at f6 drop, which may not even be all that much, actually, but no reason to allow that, right? So, excuse me, opperwezen just putting the queen on e7 and remaining ultra safe. Maybe there are better continuations there, like more active continuations, but queen e7 is ultra safe. He has all the pressure in the world here, and eekarf now, with 20 seconds on the clock, is going to have to find some really hard to find moves. So, okay, knight d2 over protecting these two squares. These two pieces have been hanging all game, but he hasn't had the time to take them until just now. Now he finally goes for it, but it's going to be too little, too late. You have a rook drop here and captures here. Instead, he's just going to remove this defender. Yeah, it's nasty. Rook takes here and queen takes here is possible. Just rook here. Yeah, anything will do, really, at this point. Pawn here. Now you can capture, I was going to say capture there and then bring the queen here, but queen here is going to work too because the rooks and the queen are now on that square, and that's going to be mate in one after a block here. Queen takes checkmate. The knight blocks off this square, this knight blocks off this square, and the queen, of course, controls this diagonal. So nicely done from opperwezen there. Congratulations to him for very solid performance there and possibly clinching the third place spot. I guess that remains to be seen, but it bodes well for his chances here in clinching a spot on the podium. Final score 6-4 opperwezen. So let's cruise on over to the cross table here and see how this affects things. Currently, again, yeah, opperwezen is number 3, bronze. eekarf was in last place. So if we go to the cross table here, opperwezen against eekarf, that's a full point, 6-4 to opperwezen. And for eekarf's part, let's roll on over to opperwezen. That's 0 and 4, 6. Should be 6. And okay, opperwezen now still at third place. eekarf, of course, still in last. That doesn't change things there. But if we look at the stats here, opperwezen has now played 6 of 7 matches, meaning he has one more match. And if he wins that, he will, of course, clinch his spot in third place. Blitzbullet is kind of the only guy who can chase him at this point. And Blitzbullet has quite a few matches yet to play. To catch up. So Blitzbullet is the one competing with him for that spot. And Blitzbullet actually still has a chance to kind of leapfrog over Jan Lee for second place, although that'll be very, very difficult to attain at this point, given Jan's very strong tie breaks. So anyway, opperwezen with that win goes to a +1 score. He's at 3.5 out of 6. eekarf now at 1 out of 5, and yeah, I think that's all we really need to talk about at this point. The matches remaining to be played. opperwezen, all you need is left. Blitzball at 12-teen. Master Tan has a few matches, and really all we need to pay attention to is how Blitzball does. These last matches against 12-teen, Master Tan, and Schwanet, all very, very tough matches, especially against 12-teen. So if he drops a full point anywhere, or even half a point, I think he won't be able to contest for second place. But so anyway, that's the standings as they stand, and hope you enjoyed that match. Congratulations to opperwezen with a 6-4 performance over eekarf. Catch you next time.